This video is sponsored by Wondershare Filmora. Andy Warhol and his art need no introduction. Whether through school books, museums, or through the media, we've all been acquainted with it. However, today I propose that we look into his Polaroid work and examine how it fits into his overall body of work, what themes it touches on, and how, similarly to William Eggleston, Warhol uses the camera as a democratic tool. So grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's discover what Andy Warhol, through this book and the images that I've collected, have to offer. And I have to say, putting this video together, I really think there's a lot of food for thought in his Polaroids, because not all is as simple as it appears. And before we discuss his Polaroids a little bit further, I wanted to touch on how Warhol came into photography, or when did his interest for photography began. So according to information I consulted, Warhol's first camera was actually a Kodak Brownie that his family owned. It is known that he often photographed as a child around his back garden and his family's house, which would have been around the 1940s. But I believe this was not a very serious kind of work, since there's no access to any of these photos or notes by Warhol's curators on their relevancy. So fast forward to the 1960s, when Warhol was at the peak of his career, exploding in popularity with pieces like the Campbell soup cans, his Marilyn Monroe depictions, and other bodies of work. He was notorious for his hand painting and skill screen technique that he had learned from artist Max Arthur Kahn. From the mid-60s onwards, however, Warhol began dabbling with filmmaking, and once around the 70s, with photography. He frequently photographed using mostly the 35mm and the Polaroid formats. And when he came to the Polaroid format, he allegedly loved the Polaroid Big Shot, which he utilized from 1971 to 1973. And this camera was designed for taking portraits, and according to the information I have, he loved this high contrast and instant nature of photos, and also to work with this camera. However, it is also worth noting that post 1973 he continued photographing with a Polaroid SX70. So perhaps he came to prefer that one more, but I'll be honest with you, there is kind of not a lot about his 35mm black and white prints. Online, I found a few examples here and there, but I feel like I couldn't get my hands on a book either, so I don't want to dive too deeply into something that I do not have enough information about. So there is a lot of information though about his Polaroids, which is what I'm going to be focusing on. So these Polaroids are all fairly similar, and while one can think these are rather casual snapshots of famous friends, there is something deliberate when it comes to the medium and presentation Warhol offers us. I do think that looking at these images, we cannot ignore the connection with a few main ideas in his body of work. The reflection on what is instantly accessible, what is massively produced in particular, and the third one, and I think the most important one, would be as well on forms that of instant gratification by our society, which I think are so important. And I think there's two ways that it's kind of treated throughout this body of work and other bodies of work, and paintings and collages and etc. I feel like one of them is the sort of obsession that people have with sort of famous people, so quote unquote regular people have with famous people, in a sense that they're almost idolized, and they are idolized and sort of elevated, whereas at the end of the day we're all the same, we're all made of exactly the same. So this idea of an elevated status, and how gratifying that is because you consume this sort of status that these people have. And on the inverse side of the coin, you have the people who are elevated by others, and so how that is sort of the idea of the instant gratification through that idea of sort of love, and that almost like cult-like following that some people have. And I feel like these are really important. And this is why I feel like Andy Warhol's images, the Polaroids, have not fallen out of fashion. And that is because all these three things that I just said, the massively produced, the instant accessibility, the instant gratification, are only enhanced in our society, have only become bigger in our society today. When we think of pop art, we think of artists that have been able to create a meaning from the manipulation or incorporation of ordinary images or objects into one piece, which is why some of these are often called ready-made art. And the 1970s, which is when most of these images that we are seeing now were produced, corresponds to the peak in popularity of Polaroids. Everyone had a Polaroid camera, from Andy Warhol to the millions of families around the world that wanted an easy, cheap, and accessible way of capturing memories. Andy Warhol once said the idea of waiting for something makes it more exciting, and while waiting for the perfect shot is part of a creator's journey, editing shouldn't really be. And that's why I'm here today to talk to you about today's sponsor, Filmora. Now, Filmora has been a great partner here on the channel. So Filmora is an editing software that makes editing not only faster, but also more of a creative process, if that makes sense, by giving you more control and more options to craft your videos. Whether you're crafting a vintage vibe, like for instance Andy Warhol and all the potential footage that you'll see, very vintagey footage today, or perhaps building something more modern and cinematic. And I want to show you a little bit how it works, and some of my favorite tools, some of the new tools as well of this version. And I want to explain you how they can be effective, how they can help you in terms of building videos, or in my case, YouTube videos. I want to talk to you about Filmora's color palette that is capable actually of replicating tones. It's a really awesome feature that lets you instantly match your footage to whatever tones you have as reference. And then you can work around the different wheels and options to do the final tweaks, of course. But I find this incredibly helpful and very, very accessible. Now, another tool I personally really like is the title editing that is more geared towards professional subtitles and captions. Filmora's title editing tools lets you add polished captions or quirky annotations, if you will, with tons of customizable fonts. And if you've seen my videos here on the channel, you probably know that I really like to use text, whether that is to make a reference to an image or whether that is to enhance an idea. So I'll probably use like a more bold, centered font on screen. The AI voice enhance is another tool that I want to talk to you about, because when you're narrating something, sharing a behind the scenes details like right now, I think the Filmora's AI voice enhancer really ensures that your voice is crisp and clear and there's no need to battle with background noise. And I have to say, although this one is very straightforward, it has saved me so many times, because sometimes I'm recording a video, and although today I'm now recording with a sort of small microphone here, but usually when I record with my other microphone, I tend to kind of move around the frame and I tend to kind of stand at different distances. So there's sometimes dips in my audio clip that are corrected by the AI voice enhancer here. And it's really interesting because obviously we're talking about artificial intelligence, but to help correct your mistakes. So it has been incredibly helpful to correct my mistakes. And another tool I also use and love, and I'd love to tell you about, is the magnetic timeline for managing multiple clips, which is of course so helpful. As you've probably seen throughout this video, I use multiple sources of footage, music, effects here and there, images. So if it wasn't for the magnetic timeline that lets me organize and align my clips quite effortlessly, well, it would take me way longer. And two other tools I'm currently exploring but are really worth to mention as well in this segment is the AI Objective Remover, which essentially makes it easy to focus on what truly matters for you or give your work a little professional polish. And the video denoise or lighting adjustment feature is also very important, especially if you have darker scenes in your videos. In my YouTube videos, I sometimes have with books and everything. So this one helps me especially reducing grainier results that I might sometimes have, again, mistakes that I might make, or shift the focus on certain key subjects that might give the scene a more cinematic look. And look, actually being cinematic and having that visual quality is very important for me. I like to, of course, I put a lot of emphasis, as you probably have noticed, in the informative part of the video. I don't want the videos to waste your time. I always want them to have something to give back to the audience. But of course, I want that to be matched with a sort of visual quality. So Filmora has been a great partner for that. It has really corrected a lot of my mistakes, to be completely honest, and also has helped me being more creative and realizing and experimenting with the editing. And so, yeah, it doesn't matter what your skill level is. Just like Andy Warhol makes art relatable and accessible, so is Filmora, but on the editing side of the spectrum here, in terms of the video. And so I think it's really important as well that a software is accessible and is easier and user-friendly. You have tons of tutorials as well through the platform and even on the website. So check out down below the link in the description if you're interested in, signing up for a free trial of Filmora. And I guess that I'd like to thank Filmora for kindly sponsoring yet another video here on the channel and being such great partners. And now that we've established how this all fits into Andy Warhol's style, I also wanted to speak on certain themes that these images touch upon that certainly connect to the artist. I want to speak on fame in particular and what's ephemeral. Because nothing really lasts forever. In 2024, the Campbell Soup Company has rebranded and is focused on different products. And icons like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor, although still respected, are not so popular as they once were, especially with younger generations. So there's a great part of Warhol's Polaroid work that I believe reflects on society's obsession with fame, on this elevation of people to an icon-like status, and at the same time, because we're talking about Polaroids, we can speak on the ephemeral nature of it all. Much like looking into old Polaroids of a birthday party, these images are memories of what once was. Who once was what? Icons that have been replaced with new ones, and those new ones will eventually be replaced by some others. In summary, these Polaroids can also reflect on the disposability of people via fame or through fame. Like a can of soup that is readily available for you in a supermarket, these people are available everywhere. We watch their movies, we listen to their songs, we see them on magazines that we buy, and eventually we forget or trade the instant gratification that we get from learning about them or seeing them somewhere or consuming whatever they have to offer and replace it with something else or someone else. And last but not the least, I wanted to bring to the table what these images also reminded me of. Going through this book, they reminded me of Warhol Eggleston's idea of the democratic camera. Eggleston came up with this concept of the democratic camera, in which he essentially grants equal importance and value to all subjects in the photograph, regardless of their conventional sense of beauty, meaning that anything can be photographed, anything can be of value, and anything can be considered art. Following these ideas, I do believe that Warhol was ahead of its time, as was Eggleston, by implying in the 1970s that one camera or format could essentially make art a democracy by making it immediate, accessible, and relatable. And relatable actually is a very important term in this whole equation. Art should be relatable, whether that is through an emotion, a sensation, a detail, a face, an idea, which is why we now see countless people either just not understanding or perhaps making fun or simply not connecting with certain contemporary art and certain exhibitions and structures. Because while they can hold all the meaning in the world for the people that create them, they simply aren't immediately relatable to a majority of the audience. With Warhol, his work is instantly recognizable. Most of us know or would know back then who these people are here in the Polaroids, what their expressions or emotions communicate. And we would also recognize the Polaroid format as we still do to these days. So is Andy Warhol a photographer? Not necessarily. I don't think he's anything in particular. I think he's a well-versed artist that utilized very different medias to kind of speak around different themes and actually make some really interesting reflections on society, consumerism, and whatnot. But simultaneously to Richard Prince, I would put him in the category of being an artist. And I know many of you are not really big fans of Richard Prince. If you are wondering who he is, link will be in the description for that video or somewhere around here. But I mean in the same category, but not so much in the same level. That's what I mean by saying that they would be on the same sort of umbrella of being artists. I think another artist that actually does this or did this really well was Keith Haring. I think, again, his art was immediate, was accessible, was relatable. And yeah, I guess that is all for today. So thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. I really appreciate you as always. And I guess that I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
My frying pan is full of grease. My bathtub is full of dirty sheets.